Hey Jasmine, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. We'll watch that video. If you'll give me a minute, I was just grading a paper. I need to send the guy back an email telling him what he did wrong. Uh,
Okay.
all right, let me get that thing pulled up here. Uh, so everything. Did you have a good day yesterday?
Yes, it was okay.
Good. So that didn't show up at all. It was just a blank screen. You couldn't hear me talking or anything.
I couldn't see you on it. It was recording, but it was just of an empty room.
And you couldn't see the video, or
No.
can you watch that other video on? Did it show up?
Yeah, that one showed up.
All right, so maybe this one will. Now, but let's go ahead and watch this. I'm glad you called me and told me that. I'm sorry, it's not still not showing up, is it? Or is it?
No. I can't see it. It's just a black screen.
Huh? All right, you can see me now, right?
Yes.
And you see the chairs. Still a black screen.
Yes.
All right. Let me try something else. All right, that's not working for some reason. Let me go get some help. It showed up on there the other day. All right, hold on. Let me go find it. Find somebody. see if it works now. I don't know if it will or not. Yep, there we go. All right. It appears to be fixed. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So what we're going to look for in this video, we're going to look, it's working, thank you. We're going to look for signs of heat. We're going to look for the hormones that we use for estrous synchronization and how they work. Okay? And to give you a heads up, that's GnRH, progesterone, and prostaglandin. Now, what I am not going to ask on the exam is explain the difference between select sync and co-sync, or, you know, whatever all the different methods and combinations of these drugs are. All I'm going to ask you is what hormones we use in estrous synchronization and why do they work? Because they're always coming up with new ways to get, you know, there's so many different varieties of these synchronization techniques. You got to pick one that fits you the best. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, you know, it's going to go over all them. But I want you, you know, and they're important, you know, and you need to be aware of them, but you need to know what I want. The take home message is what hormones and how do they work with estrous synchronization.
The primary factor affecting the profitability of any animal breeding enterprise is reproduction. Other than nutrition, the most powerful tool at the beef producer's disposal that significantly impacts reproductive performance is estrus synchronization. Although historically promoted as a labor-saving tool for those producers who want to capitalize on the superior genetics available through artificial insemination, many producers have come to realize that the greatest economic returns from estrus synchronization are a result of more timely and efficient reproductive management. The basics of beef cattle reproductive management dictate that cows are bred during a defined breeding season. This allows calving to occur when the weather is conducive to high rates of calf survival. Controlling the time of calving is also an important part of matching the seasonal availability of grass and forage with the peak lactation demands imposed by the growing calf.
Oh, and this is another reason of why another take home message, okay, of why we try to have a defined breeding season and a defined calving season, of matching everything up with the forages. So it goes back to forage production, forage management as well. All right.
Okay.
Not only is it important to maintain short breeding and calving seasons, but it's also extremely important that a high percentage of the herd conceives early in the breeding season. Cows require time to recover from the stress of calving before they can be expected to rebreed. Cows that calve early will have more days postpartum when the next breeding season begins, and will be more likely to have resumed normal estrus cycles and fertility. Once a cow calves late, she will be short postpartum when the next breeding season begins and predisposed to reduced fertility. Thus, without estrus synchronization, she will likely continue to conceive later and later until she must eventually be culled from the herd. Not only does estrus synchronization facilitate early conception in the cycling cows, but many protocols are also therapeutic treatments to jumpstart cyclicity in these late calving or anestrus cows. Cows that calve early will produce calves that weigh more at weaning simply because they are older. At 2 pounds per day of calf growth, times 90 cents per pound, each day older a calf is at weaning means an additional $1.80 in your pocket. Moving a cow up 1 week is worth $12.60 per head in calf weaning weight. A calf conceived on the first day of a 60-day breeding season will be worth $108 more than one conceived on the last day. Replacement heifers kept from early calving cows will be older at the beginning of their first breeding season and more likely to have reached puberty and targeted breeding weights, while heifers kept from late calving cows will be younger and predisposed to reproductive problems. In a herd that does not use synchronization, only 1/3 of the cycling animals can be expected to display estrus during the first week of the breeding season. Whether inseminated naturally or artificially, only 65 to 70% can be expected to conceive to a given insemination. Therefore, after a week of breeding to natural heats, no more than 23% of the eligible animals can be expected to be pregnant. Considering the fact that even in well-managed herds, as many as 25 to 50% of the cows will not be cycling at the beginning of the breeding season, this estimate is very generous. In contrast, many estrus synchronization protocols can induce 70 to 90% of the cycling cows and as many as 50% of the anestrus cows to display a fertile estrus within a 5-day period. With conception rates equal to or greater than those of natural heats, it is typical for many synchronization protocols to result in 45 to 55% of the herd pregnant by the end of the first week of the breeding season. Several fixed-time AI options are available that result in 40 to 50% of the herd pregnant following a single day of breeding, with 0 hours spent for heat detection. Cows that display estrus early will have 3 opportunities to conceive during an 8-week breeding season, compared to only 2 chances for cows that don't show heat until after the 2nd week. Because of increased estrus intensity in synchronized groups of cows, fewer heats are at risk of going undetected. Cows that do not display estrus after synchronization may not be cycling. Early identification and treatment of problem cows is essential to get them rebred in a timely fashion. Even in the best management scenarios, first calf heifers can be difficult to settle. Heifers that experienced calving problems due to a heavy birth weight calf are nearly impossible to rebreed. Breeding virgin heifers to proven calving ease sires 3 weeks prior to the cow herd reduces the incidence of costly calving problems and allows additional recovery time before the next breeding season. Also, when heifers calve during a short synchronized calving season, it is easy to provide labor to assist with difficult births and reduce the incidence of early calf mortality. Most benefits of estrus synchronization are a function of improved reproductive performance. The fact that estrus synchronization also facilitates the use of superior genetics from proven AI sires is just icing on the cake. In reality, the economic benefits available through AI alone pale in comparison to the return on investment when estrus synchronization and AI are used together as a reproductive management tool. The foundation hormone of nearly all estrus synchronization protocols is the naturally occurring hormone prostaglandin. Most commonly known by the brand names of Lutalize, Estromate, and Prostamate, prostaglandins bring cows into heat by destroying the CL of cycling animals. The major limitation of prostaglandins is that they are only effective in animals that possess a CL. Therefore, cows within 6 to 7 days of a previous heat, prepubertal heifers, and anestrus cows do not respond to prostaglandin injections. Prostaglandins can often be used quite efficiently in cycling heifers. However, because of the high incidence of anestrus, even in well-managed herds, prostaglandins alone are generally not recommended for postpartum suckled beef cows. The most common method of synchronization with prostaglandin is to inject all heifers and breed those who come into heat over the next 5 to 7 days. Heifers not detected in estrus after the first injection are re-injected 14 days later and bred to detected estrus over the next 5 to 7 days. If labor is a limiting factor, all heat detection and breeding can be delayed until after the second prostaglandin injection. Although historic recommendations were to inject prostaglandin at 11-day intervals, the 14-day interval is simpler to schedule and slightly more effective. A lower-cost alternative is to breed heifers to natural heats for 6 days and inject the remaining heifers with prostaglandin and continue to breed over the next 5 to 7 days. This system allows all cycling heifers to be bred during a 2-week interval. Because prostaglandin only affects the CL and does nothing to control follicular development, considerable variation exists in the interval from injection to estrus. Therefore, attempts to fixed-time inseminate following prostaglandin alone seldom result in acceptable pregnancy rates. A time-tested and proven method for synchronizing estrus in virgin heifers is the MGA-PGF protocol. MGA stands for melangestrol acetate, a synthetic form of the hormone progesterone. Mix MGA into a grain supplement and feed at a rate of 1/2 milligram per head per day for 14 days. Within 3 to 5 days after MGA feeding, many heifers will display estrus. Do not breed at this heat, as conception rates are reduced. Wait 17 to 19 days after the last day of MGA feeding and inject all heifers with a single dose of prostaglandin. For best results, breed heifers 8 to 12 hours after detected estrus for the next 5 to 7 days. If heat detection is not an option, reasonably good pregnancy rates have been achieved by single fixed-time inseminations at 60 to 72 hours after PGF. A third option is to breed heifers to detected estrus for 3 days after PGF, then fixed-time AI the remaining heifers at 72 to 80 hours. With good heat detection of well-managed heifers at the proper age, weight, and body condition, synchronized AI pregnancy rates usually range between 50 and 70%. Pregnancy rates to fixed-time AI alone using the MGA-PGF system will likely be 5 to 15 percentage points lower than heat detection-based options. Recent advances in our understanding of regulation and control of follicular dynamics in cattle have led to the development of tremendously more effective and precise methods of estrus synchronization for postpartum cows. Most of these protocols operate from the same basic foundation, which involves an injection of GnRH followed 7 days later with an injection of prostaglandin. More popularly known by the commercial brand names of Fertigil, Factrel, and Cisterellin, GnRH causes a surge of luteinizing hormone to be released from the pituitary gland. This surge of LH causes ovulation or luteinization of dominant follicles present on the ovaries at the time of injection, which in turn results in the development of an accessory CL. The accessory CL stimulates progesterone production, which helps to induce cyclicity in anestrus cows, and removal of the dominant follicle synchronizes the initiation of a new follicular wave 2 to 3 days later. Injecting cows with GnRH and prostaglandin at a 7-day interval synchronizes both follicular development and luteal regression. The simplest GnRH PGF protocol is SelectSync. With this system, heat detection begins 24 to 48 hours before the PGF injection to catch those early heats and continues for the next 5 to 7 days. Cows are inseminated 8 to 12 hours after observed estrus. In most herds, 65 to 75% of SelectSync treated cows will display estrus within 72 hours after prostaglandin injection. This facilitates the use of a second breeding option. In option 2, cows are inseminated to detected estrus until 60 hours after PGF. At 72 hours, the remaining cows are fixed-time inseminated, and those that have not displayed estrus are also given an injection of GnRH to induce ovulation. This option maximizes potential conception rates by breeding the majority of the herd to standing heats, while the 72-hour mass AI limits estrus detection and still gives every cow the opportunity to conceive. Labor requirements are reduced by 2 or 3 days compared to option 1, and hormone usage is considerably reduced compared to other fixed-time AI protocols. With either option, synchronized AI pregnancy rates in well-managed beef herds typically range between 45 and 55%. OVSync is a fixed-time AI protocol that is used extensively in dairy cattle. OVSync builds on the basic GnRH-PGF format with a second injection of GnRH 48 hours after prostaglandin. This second GnRH injection induces ovulation of the dominant follicle recruited after the first GnRH injection. All cows are then mass inseminated without estrus detection at 8 to 18 hours after the second GnRH injection. Although OVSync works as well in beef cattle as it does in dairy, the protocol requires 4 trips through the working chute. This is of minimal concern to the dairy producer, but a trip through the chute is often a significant physical and economic event in many beef herds. Researchers at Colorado State University demonstrated that comparable pregnancy rates can be achieved with only 3 trips through the chute, and all cows are inseminated at 48 hours after PGF, coinciding with a second GnRH injection. Thus, the name CoSync. Most research regarding the CoSync protocol inseminated cows at 48 hours after PGF. However, a 60 to 64-hour interval, as prescribed by OVSync, more closely matches estrus synchrony data obtained following SelectSync treatment. Although OVSync and CoSync can achieve pregnancy rates greater than 50% in beef cattle, overall averages are more often in the 40 to 45% range. However, to keep these numbers in perspective, OVSync and CoSync create equal or greater numbers of pregnancies in a single day than natural service can generate in 2 to 3 weeks. The MGA Select protocol is an outstanding choice to maximize synchronized AI pregnancy rates in postpartum beef cows. As in the previously described heifer program, cows are fed MGA at a rate of 1/2 milligram per head per day for 14 days. Within 3 to 5 days of the end of MGA feeding, cows will begin to display estrus. Do not breed at this heat, as conception rates are reduced. Wait 12 days after the last day of MGA feeding and initiate the SelectSync protocol. Insemination options include 5 to 7 days of heat detection and AI, 72 to 80 hours of heat detection followed by mass AI and GnRH to non-responders, or simply fixed-time AI and GnRH at 72 hours after PGF. In study after study, the MGA Select protocol has proven itself to be a very effective means to synchronize postpartum beef cows, often achieving synchronized pregnancy rates in excess of 60%, using both estrus detection and timed AI-based options. The major limitation of the long-term MGA Select protocol is the duration of treatment. With 33 days from start to finish, some cows may not have calved by the time you're ready to start feeding MGA. However, these late calving cows need some form of synchronization to jumpstart cyclicity and catch them up. The following are shorter duration protocols that may help keep these late calvers in the herd. The Easy Breed Cedar is the most recently approved product for synchronization of estrus in cattle. The cedar, as it's commonly called, is a T-shaped vaginal insert that delivers the natural hormone progesterone. Cows and heifers receive the cedar on day 0 and lutealize on day 6 or 7, with cedar removal always occurring on day 7. Females are bred 8 to 12 hours after observed estrus for the next 3 to 5 days, or at a single fixed time 48 to 64 hours after cedar removal. Numerous research trials indicate an injection of GnRH at cedar insertion may further improve synchronized reproductive performance, especially among anestrus cows. In other words, pregnancy rates of the many popular GnRH PGF protocols, such as off-sync, co-sync, and select-sync, are often improved by inserting the cedar at GnRH injection and removing the cedar at the luteolase injection on day 7. In each of these large-scale field trials, the GnRH cedar treatment tended to result in greater pregnancy rates than either the cedar or GnRH PGF alone. In 2 of these studies, the effects of the co-sync protocol with and without the cedar was determined for both cycling and non-cycling cows. In both studies, the magnitude of the advantage for the co-sync plus cedar treatment was greater in the non-cycling than in the cycling cows. The single most important factor affecting the success of any estrus synchronization protocol is the percentage of animals cycling at the initiation of treatment. For the beginner, the first 2 years of synchronization and AI are going to be the most difficult to implement, primarily because of the extended calving season, characteristic of most natural service herds. Some early calving cows will be ready for breeding long before some of the late cows have calved. This may require multiple synchronization groups and some tough culling decisions in the early years. Do not be afraid to push the envelope on some of those late calving groups and breed them as early as 30 to 40 days after calving. Obviously, you must be prepared to accept lower reproductive performance within these groups of cows. However, using synchronization and AI to induce cyclicity and generate pregnancies in timely fashion will be much more profitable than leaving the job to the herd bull. As a higher percentage of cows calve earlier in each successive calving season, the reproductive potential and profitability of your herd will likewise grow exponentially. The nutrition program is also critical if high rates of cyclicity are to be achieved prior to the breeding season. Good managers will feed cows to achieve moderate or better body condition by the time of calving. Supplemental energy during the stressful period of early lactation will help to minimize body condition loss. Regular use of body condition scoring will help ensure the nutrition program is allowing for optimum reproductive performance in your herd. The suckling stimulus of a nursing calf extends the duration of postpartum anestrus in cattle. Early weaning of calves provides an excellent means to improve the cycling status of the average beef herd. When initiated at the time of PGF injection of any synchronization protocol, 48-hour calf removal will often improve estrus response rates by about 10%. Work with your veterinarian to maintain an intensive herd health and vaccination program that addresses all diseases of relevant concern. Vaccinate cows at least 3 weeks ahead of the synchronization and breeding period to allow adequate time for the immune system to respond and provide protection from the diseases in question. First calf heifers, late calving cows, difficult births, and retained placentas are all associated with reduced fertility. Group these high-risk animals separately so maximum nutrition, veterinary care, and TLC can be efficiently provided. The success of any synchronization protocol that requires MGA feeding depends on adequate bunk space and proper feeding rates. Double-check the actual concentration of MGA in the supplement to ensure appropriate mixing. Consumption rates can be more precisely controlled by thoroughly mixing MGA into 3 to 5 pounds of grain and feeding separately, rather than as a top dressing or as part of a TMR. Always use some type of estrus detection aid to improve the efficiency of your heat detection program. These devices also facilitate identification of cows that should or should not receive GnRH injections in conjunction with fixed-time AI. Before synchronizing cows, make sure adequate labor will be available for heat detection and breeding, and that each person is adequately trained for their assigned task. recheck the semen tank and breeding kit to ensure adequate quantities of semen and that all necessary breeding supplies are in your possession. Make sure cattle handling facilities are in proper working order and safe for both man and beast. The profitability of any beef production enterprise hinges on sound reproductive management. Although estrus synchronization has always been a valuable tool to the beef producer, recently developed protocols provide opportunities to impact reproductive performance as never before. In the process, these protocols also facilitate the use of artificial insemination, which further improves profitability through use of superior, proven genetics. If you have further questions regarding use of estrus synchronization as a reproductive management tool in your herd, contact your local Select Sires member co-op. Our experienced and knowledgeable staff of
All right. So, what did you get from that?
I think I'm a little confused.
Okay, that's all right. So, uh, let's go back to. I'm trying to figure out how to get this back up. Okay. Uh, let's see here. What what are you confused on? Let's solve that issue first.
Um, like, I, well, I'm confused on, like, I have, like, when they give them the injection of each thing, but
Well,
that's
I'm
about
not
all,
worried.
I think.
I'm not so concerned about that. There are so many of those different regimens that, in reality, if you're going to look at breeding your cows uh, through artificial insemination and doing a fixed time deal, you're going to sit there and you're going to look at that and figure out which one's best for you. Okay? Without having to run the cattle through the chute, or maybe you got really good facilities and your cattle are handled, are close by, and that's not that big of a deal for you. You're gonna find the one that works best for you. And what works best for you this year may not work best for you next year because of time constraints or labor. Okay? So, that may change. And in reality, you know, when I was in college in the late 80s through so from the late 80s all the way through the mid 90s, this stuff was changing every year. Okay, the methods we used for synchronization in the 80s, we had prostaglandin, and then came out progesterone and estrogen. We were using estrogen as well, and but the main things we used was that MGA that you fed. We used that on everything that we AI'd and gave them a shot of prostaglandin 31 days later. Um, so it was long and drawn out deal, and it helped, but there were some disadvantages. Like he said, some of those cows may not have calved by the time you got to start feeding them MGA. Um, One of the things we did at Tech, there was another program out, and it used progesterone and estradiol, which is estrogen, uh, and prostaglandin. I only saw that used at Tech. We didn't use that anywhere else or on the farms. So that might have been more of an experimental type deal, or wasn't really. It was difficult to do, so maybe it wasn't done on a lot of farms because of that. That MGA was a lot easier. Um, and then in the late '90s, boy, GNRH came out, and so we used the MGA, the Lutalice, and then the GNRH shot with everything we didn't breed through heat detection. So many hours later, we gave them GNRH and time disseminated everything. And then the cedars came out. And when those cedars came out, we quit fooling with the MGA. It was just so much easier to put in that vaginal implant. So during all this time, as they experimented with these different hormones and these different drug combinations and timing, everything started changing. And I'm not so certain, this has stayed pretty standard, uh, at least in the beef cattle industry, of giving GnRH and putting in the cedar, and then upon removal of the cedar, you give them a prostaglandin injection, and then you come in and time disseminate them. That's kind of standard for everything now in in the in the beef industry. And if they come up with another drug or another way of making it easier or less time through the chute, it's all those protocols are going to change. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, these things of the protocol or the different methods of insemination, they've they've changed tremendously since I got into this, since I was in college in the late '80s. It's just changed tremendously. So it's going to be up to you to stay current. But what I need you to understand is why we use those three drugs, why we use those three hormones, and what do those hormones do? Okay? So what what does prostaglandin do?
It destroys the corpus luteum.
That's right. It destroys the corpus luteum. And as long as those cows have corpus luteums, prostaglandin works great. They'll be in heat about 48 to 72 hours later, typically. It can be longer. Uh, but it works. It works good. Now, the problem of using prostaglandin alone is like in these virgin heifers, if they're not sexually mature and they don't have a CL, then prostaglandin is not going to work, right?
Right.
If a cow's just calved and she's in that period of quiescence or anestrus where she's not cycling, it's not going to work, is it?
No.
So, so, so there's some issues of just using prostaglandin alone, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, but it works good as long as they have a corpus luteum. Now, if they just finish that heat cycle and that corpus luteum is beginning to form, that thing is very heavily protected, and a shot of prostaglandin is not going to knock it out. So those first 7 or 8 days right after estrus, when that corpus luteum is forming, prostaglandin is going to be ineffective. And then those last few days of the estrus cycle, when that corpus luteum is regressing and she's coming into heat on her own, that prostaglandin shot's not going to work either. We may think it's working, but the CL's regressing naturally on its own, and she'd be in heat within a few days by herself. So we really don't know on those cows. We just give them all a shot. And that's why they recommend giving 2 shots of that, because those in that first few days, the first 7 days or so after estrus, that corpus luteum is heavily protected, and the prostaglandin is not going to knock it out. So you give a shot to everything, and then you come back 14 days and give a second shot, you're going to have everything tightened up as long as they all are already cycling. Does that help explain it?
Yes.
Okay. Progesterone, what does it do?
It maintains the pregnancy. Okay,
it maintains the pregnancy, and it prepares that uterus to be pregnant, to get, it prepares the uterus for pregnancy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Jasmine, you're familiar with race cars, and
yes.
You're familiar with motors, right?
Yes.
If a motor is completely dry of gas, all right, you ran it out of gas completely, and you put gas in the gas tank, is it going to start?
No.
No. You have to prime that carburetor with gas and get it into the engine to where it can fire, right?
Yes.
Okay. Progesterone, or cows, are kind of the same way. If they've got to have that progesterone priming, just like a car devoid of gas has to have that gas priming. So what the progesterone does, it's got a couple of purposes. One, for those heifers that are not yet sexually mature or haven't reached puberty, but they're real close to reaching puberty. And those cows that have calved but they haven't started calving yet, by giving them that cedar, or giving them that progesterone through that vaginal implant, that's going to give them that progesterone priming to help them. Same thing with that MGA that we feed. It gives them that progesterone priming. Make sense?
Yes.
For those that are in estrus, that progesterone primes them up. For those that are already cycling, the progesterone levels are higher than what produces in that CL. And so we're creating, through that progesterone, a false corpus luteum, and it will override the regular corpus luteum. And if that corpus luteum is regressing on its own, we're maintaining that progesterone level in that animal. So that when we remove that progesterone, they're not going to have a CL, and they're going to come into heat. They're going to go ahead and ovulate and come into heat. If they don't have a CL to begin with, we're giving them that progesterone priming, and we're creating a false corpus luteum so that when we pull that out, they're going to come into heat. All right?
Okay.
So when we stop that progesterone, or we pull that out with the cedars, I think you give the you give the shot of Ludolice when you remove that cedar, right? If they have a
Right.
corpus luteum, the prostaglandin is going to remove their natural corpus luteum. If they don't have a corpus luteum, that prostaglandin shot's not going to do any good, but we can't tell the difference unless we go in there and palpate. And we're not going to take the time to do that. We're just going to shoot them all up with a shot of Ludolice or prostaglandin when we pull that cedar out, because it's fairly inexpensive, and it's cheaper than spending the time trying to go in there and fill the ovary to see whether or not has a corpus luteum, and then decide to give them a shot or not. So you just give them all a shot of prostaglandin to remove any corpus luteums they may have, or the cow's corpus luteum. And so they've had the progesterone priming. We've created a CL for them. And if their CL was going to regress naturally, we're still maintaining them on that progesterone. And when we pull it out, they're going to come into heat. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then the third drug that we use is the GnRH. And what was the purpose of the GnRH? Did you catch that?
It regulates the release of LH.
Right. It causes ovulation of the dominant follicle at the time. It'll cause that cow to ovulate, and when she ovulates, she's going to form a CL. So, we're going in there. We give them the GnRH, and we put in the progesterone implant if we're using those cedars. She's going to ovulate, form a CL. We've put in the progesterone to also help her with that deal. Then when we pull it out, we're going to give a shot of prostaglandin, and then I think it was 60 hours later we do time insemination. So, or 72 hours. See, I can't even keep those straight. I'm not going to ask you to. I want you to understand those three hormones and what they do. Are you still confused? Or are you more confused?
I'm not confused anymore. I understand it.
Well, I'm glad I did a good job explaining it. I was afraid I was going to get you more confused. So, why do we AI cows? It's not, one is to get better genetics in there, right? In our herd. But we can AI our cows, take advantage of those better genetics, use synchronization, and get the majority of our cows bred really early in their breeding season. And then when they calve, they're going to calve real early in their breeding season. And those calves are going to gain more weight, and they'll be worth more when we sell them, because they're going to be heavier, and hopefully they'll be more uniform. And on the cow's end of it, she's going to get bred during that timed insemination, and then she's going to have a couple other chances in a 60-day period to help keep her in the herd in case we missed her with AI. Whether it was their fault or the cow's fault, she's going to be back into heat in about 21 days. She'll be being bred natural service, and hopefully she'll be bred then. So that's the reason we do it. Now, do all herds do this? No. Is it feasible for all cattle producers to do this? No. Should they all do it? It depends. What are their facilities? How, is it going to work for them or not? You take the one place I worked at Stewart, or not the one place, but one of the places I've worked. The Rich Mountain Farm, man, it was rough. It was rough mountain country. And we didn't have working facilities up on the mountain. And um, we, if you kept the cattle down low until the breeding season, which is in June, we would have to graze our hay fields, or and then that's going to sacrifice on our hay production because we're not going to have that first cut in the hay. Uh, if we turned them out on the mountain, and then gathered them all up, brought them down off the mountain, and synchronized them, then turned them back out, or to give them the GnRH and put in the cedars, turned them back out, then gather them back up. You may not get them all back in. They were running on 20,000 acres, and there was no fence. It was rough country. It takes you about a week to gather everything up in the fall. You get the majority of them in, and then you're hunting strays. So that was pretty much impossible for us to do. If we had boundaries set up there, we know we could put cattle in, and then come back and get them. It might be a different story. Or we had working facilities up there on top of the mountain. But when you have to trail them down off the mountain, and it takes about 2 hours to trail them down, it's pretty intense, labor intensive, and a big ordeal to bring those cows off the mountain. So it wasn't real economical or feasible for us to AI that herd. And I don't know and it's still not now. They just use natural breeding, and as soon as they get done calving, or they get some cows calved out enough to spend a day working calves, we'd work calves, and then the next day we'd take that group of cows and calves up on the mountain, and we'd kick them out on grass and get them off the feeding, put them on good grass. And then a few weeks later, we'd work another set of cows, ship them up, and trail them up on the mountain, because we're running short on feed in the springtime, and we want those cows off those hay meadows, because the only place we could calve out's on the hay meadows. It's so straight up and down up there. The only flat land is on top of the ridges and in the hollers. So that's how we did it. And so synchronizing that herd is just not feasible. It's too costly. It's not economically feasible. So it's not going to work in every situation. But if it can work for you, I think there's some economic benefits to be gained. All right, what other questions you got?
I can't think of any other ones.
All right, let me see how long this video is. It's 20 minutes. We're not going to have enough time for that one. All right. So are you confused in any way now with those
No.
hormones?
No.
You understand the importance of the breeding soundness exams on males, and how FSH and LH works on the male end of it?
Yes.
You understand the female end of it, with the different hormones and what they do and where they originate from?
Yes.
Okay. You understand about EPDs? You can compare bulls and pick out from a scenario which bull you should use, or you can back up your decision.
Yes.
All right. That's pretty much what we've covered: genetics, reproduction, uh, health for uh, for this second exam. So um, we'll have that. I'll probably just stick it on Blackboard, like I told you the other day. I'll have it ready, and so since we don't have class on Thursday, you know, I'll try to have it ready so you can take it Thursday, or well, I know the college ain't gonna be open. I'll have it up. I'll try to have it up there next week for you, and you can take it at your convenience. Did you take your HR exam? I haven't had a chance to look.
Yes, I took it
Yeah,
yesterday.
you said you were going to do that yesterday. So, all right, good deal. Do you have any? You don't have any more questions or concerns or anything at this point?
No,
Am I boring you, or is this interesting to you?
it's interesting.
Well, that was the right answer. I hope it was honest.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm
Well,
for this
what's
cold.
that? The
I'm just
cold.
still trying to get this cold.
Yeah, I know. It lingers like precious memories, right? Precious memories, how they linger. The cold lingers as well. You don't want me to sing, trust me. Uh, I don't sound very well. So, all right. Well, that's all I had prepared for today. I was wanting to show that other video, but we don't have enough time because it's about 20 minutes as well. So we will. I'll let you go a little bit early today, and I'll see you tomorrow in HR.
All right, see you tomorrow.
All right. You be good and be careful.
You too.
And thanks for calling me and letting me know I didn't show up, Jasmine.
No problem.
Yeah. Anytime that happens, you got anything like that, you're probably not the only one that's not working. For the other students, the online students probably were freaking out over it as well. So hopefully